Satnam, yogis and yoginis, hello and welcome. One more video on the Yoga Sutras. Today we will be doing the Niyamas. The last video we were covering the Yamas. Today we will do the Niyamas. And in the last video we talked about the introduction of what the difference is between Yamas and Niyamas and explain a few different interpretations. And the way I generally like to understand it is that the Yamas is a relationship to the exterior, to other people and the world around us. And the Niyamas is the relationship to ourselves. So today we're going to go into the relationship to ourselves, the 5 Niyamas. Let us just revisit the 5 Yamas very quickly. We did this on the last day. Ahimsa, not harming. Satya, truth. Asteya, not stealing. Brahmacharya, godly conduct. And aparigraha, non-possessiveness. Yeah, we found 5 things that we receive like a gift by developing mastery over these 5 yamas. By being harmless, it's an aura of peace. Truthfulness is the Vaksiti, whatever you say becomes true. By not stealing, you attract prosperity. Through godly conduct, you receive vigor. And through non-possessiveness, you don't know the how and the why of birth or existence. And we had a few examples of situations that we wouldn't notice how we are breaking the yama. And I was trying explicitly to find examples in which we would not notice. And it would be, we would think this is harmless behavior, going back to the harmlessness, right? But actually it does break the yama and therefore has negative consequences. No, like I'm only joking, but saying things about somebody who can be harmful and then pretending it was just a joke. Exaggeration, that's not telling the truth. Wasting time, my time, other people's time, that was a way of stealing. Overindulging, that's a way to break our conduct, our godly conduct. And holding grudges, that's also possessiveness, like being too possessive, especially on the grudges thing. Now, these are going to apply also to ourselves, to our person. And when we come into these niyamas, we're going to see how these are going to somehow, they're also going to be kind of relevant to ourselves. But let's call the 5 niyamas. Let's see what they are. So the first one is Socha. Santosh. Tapas, which is not the Spanish tapas. This is not for eating. That's a normal joke in Spain when we cover the niyamas. Sodeya. And Ishvara Pranidhana. That's the 5. And this is the Yoga Sutras 2.40. This is 2.40 to 2.45, as we will see. So let's go straight away. Let's get the blue pen. Let's try to make it similar to this one. For the first of the niyamas, that's 2.40. Let us read what Patanjali has to say for us. Socha is purity. Okay? Socha is purity. It's like Sach. Like when in the Mul Mantra we chant Egonkar Satnam Kartapurak Nirbho Nirvairakal Munat Ajuni Se Bhangur Prasad Jap At Sach Yugat Sach He Be Sach Nanaka Hosi Be Sach. That's Sach. That's purity. And I refer to sometimes when we talked about the Mul Mantra, I talked about how Sach combines purity with truth. So it's kind of Sat and Sach together. And you can find, I think there was moments from Guruji's words when Guru Nanak would go into some towns and he would use Sach Nam, or he would refer to Sach like it's Sat, like to speak about the truth. And I think it's something about the the way you would say it in different regions. You would say rather than sat, saying sach. So it's interesting that the very word for truth can also be utilized as purity, at least in Gurmukhi, in that era, in that moment. I remember reading something about this. And so truth and purity, I mean, it makes sense, right? If something is true, it's pure. And if something is pure, it's like finding its truth, its true essence in a way. So there's no probably surprise that they are connected, but that's interesting that we have on the yamas, we have satya, on the niyamas, we have socha, purity. And well, here in the translations that we have, he says, by purification arises disgust for one's own body and the contact with other bodies. And look at this. This is quite remarkable in this translation. Well, first of all, let's put the purity here. Here, purity. And what we were doing here is, if you master harmlessness, then you develop this, or of peace. So by mastering purity, what do you get? And interesting how the description of the translations say, when somebody is established in internal and external cleanliness, then arises in him a disgust for one's own body and desire for non-intercourse with others. Now this disgust is kind of like a very ascetic way of talking about the human body. And, if you're an ascetic, a brahmacharya in the sense of somebody who has no sex, so you will even see the body as something dirty. That's quite unusual, to see the body as something dirty, something disgusting. Yeah. By purification arises disgust for one's own body and the contact with other bodies. And you can see this disgust as a translation in many places. Yeah, they talk about this disgusting. And here, Scherer says, brings freedom from contact with other bodies. Okay? And becomes disciplined towards contacting the body of others. And he talks about distancing, attitude of distancing or disinterest. I think that's much softer than disgust. Yeah. So, but what is it? Is it disgust? Satnam Pete Stevens, hello, thank you. Nice to see you. Have you heard about the Yoga Sutras before? How did you learn it? Did you learn a different translation? I'm happy to receive new voices, so please let me know. But yeah, this disgust is something that shocks me, because disgust is one of the basic emotions. We talked about how there is some universal emotions that you can see in the faces of animals and humans, and they are universal across cultures. It has nothing to do with the culture. And disgust is one of them, as it is surprise or fear or anger. And disgust linked to an emotion. We talked about how emotions are colorings in our experience. They are klishta, and they color our thoughts as well, and they cause karma. So it would surprise me that the gift that you get from looking for purity, it's about disgust. That doesn't make sense to me. And so I want to find out a different translation to this. I don't particularly like this word. You and have read through a copy, yes? Yeah, you have one of the ones I'm consulting here. Let's see, how do you relate to this word, disgust? I don't particularly like it. I'm not disgusted by the word, but this disgust feels like something is triggered by the amygdala, is something that pulls you back, right? Is the sensation to pull back from something that could be damaging or could create harm in you. Like if you feel like a, rotten porridge, right? From 3 days ago, left away of the fridge, and there's some flies and stuff. As we smell it, we are going to feel this disgust. And that's a trigger to pull away from something. And in a way, I get it, because you're trying to pull away from the body, because we are very much into the body and we are attached to the body. No, a different version? Okay. Then if you have it there, I would love to see how do they translate it in that one, and tell us which version is. Thank you. And so when we feel disgust from this porridge which is spoiled, that's to save your life, right? So that's an internal animalistic mechanism in our brain. Yeah, repulsion, exactly, which is to save us from something. Now, to say that if we're encouraging purity, socha, and we should feel disgusted by our own body. Well, this body is precious. This body gives us this possibility for this human incarnation, and is the temple of God. Sometimes it's called the temple of the soul or the temple of God. So why should we feel disgusted by it? And yes, it's full of mucus and blood and other secretions that one would say like, oh my God. But come on, this is about being yogis, not about being disgusted by the body. If, body is part of us, it's also the mind. We could also say, well, feel disgusted about your own mind, but is that going to help? Even if, I don't like some of my thoughts, feeling disgust about my mind is kind of, we are so associated to the mind and the body that's kind of saying, well, feel disgust about your own self in a way. And I get it. It's telling this so that we pull away from the association with the body so that we associate with the spirit. But I don't particularly like that translation. So let's check this wonderful book. Pete, if you don't know this book, this is called The Unadorned Thread of Yoga. I don't know if you know it. And it's many translations of the Yoga Sutras. And it has not only the very quite famous translations, there's 12 of them, like Satchidananda's or like Vivekananda or Swami Ganeshvara. They are very, very good, but also has the original Sanskrit. And so we can check back to the root. So let's do this. Let's do that. So when we come to the word of disgust, this jugupsa, if we look at the root, comes from gup, which means protect. And okay, depending on the context of the word, it can be used as aversion or disgust and distancing, but also the desire to protect. So being the root protect, even if jugupsa, it is often has been used as a disgust, and it will be utilized also by those ascetic teachers who are trying to teach their students to be monks and to not have sexual relations. To be disgusted by somebody's body is going to be a useful tool to keep them in line in a way. You don't know it? You don't know it? Yeah. So it's a useful tool, but how about just utilizing the original word to protect? So when you are mastering purity, your body is protected. Yeah, you are protecting your body and the body of others. And that you can see that in a number of layers. For example, if I am careful about what I'm eating, I'm going to be eating pure food, and that's going to connect to sattva, sattvic food. Then, and interesting, the word sattva has the sat, which is connected to the satya, but I also mentioned how satya and socha are kind of connected. So if you eat this pure food, you are protecting your body from diseases and from illnesses and things like that. And from not just that, also like if you eat food which is tamasic, you're going to have a low level of energy. Or if you eat very greasy, oily food, you're going to be heavy. These kind of things. Purity of what you eat is going to help you to protect that thing that you are feeding. So when we apply socha to the body, socha can also be applied to the mind and emotions and many other things. But when we apply it to the body, we'll be taking care of the body, taking care of what comes in so that it's pure food. That's going to be protecting it. By protecting yourself, you're protecting others. And, like nowadays in this era post-COVID, if you are sick, then okay, you can, in Japan, this would be very common even before COVID. Right now, I mean, the whole world was wearing these masks. But the idea of the mask, when you were, I was in Japan, I don't know how long ago was that now, 20 years ago. And you would see people with masks back then, but they didn't wear it so they weren't, because they were disgusted by other people. They wore it because they were sick and they wanted to protect others from their sickness. So independently of whether you think that masks work or not and how effective they are and how to wear them, independent of that, wearing that mask was a way to protect others from your disease. So how interesting, no? But purity, socha, protecting yourself and protecting others. So the food one consumes becomes the mind is one idea. Yes. So yeah, that's a good way to put it. Whatever we eat, we become. So if you eat a lot of dead meat, who has suffered in the process of dying before you ate it, then that passes into your mind, and your consciousness is affected by that. So purity of food that you eat, purity. Let's talk about the food of the mind as well. Yeah, and this is directly like the food that we consume. It affects the mind, but also the mind. We feed the mind with stuff. So on the other day, we were giving examples of ways in which we naturally wouldn't think that that's breaking the yama or niyama. But how about when we watch anything on TV or the tablet or Netflix, whatever, you put anything just to distract yourself, and that's fine. All energy, probably the same idea pertains. Yes, I think so. Yeah, on just a different level, the body or the mind or the emotions as well. So watching anything, having no criteria, or choosing to watch something that is actually not pure. Like, for example, the news in mainstream media a lot of mainstream media is biased, and they are very often forms of propaganda and manipulation. But even in spite of that, let's not even go there, right? If you look at the news, they should be called bad news channel, because 90% of them are bad news. They are about bad things that occur. And that's because drama sells. Drama creates addiction, and people, oh wow, let's watch this because it's, what happened, no? Gossip is another good example. So, socha, when we partake in gossip, particularly negative gossip, there's a kind of gossip that can be useful, but we're not going to explore this today. But when we go into gossip, we are breaking socha. We are not allowing the purity of the mind. When we are gossiping about somebody at their back, saying things that are not nice about them, then this is not socha. Though this is again, gossip is more about our relationship to other people. And I was saying that niyamas would be more about the relationship to ourselves. So, but this is not about the karma that it has to talk bad about somebody. Yeah, that creates a karma because we are speaking something that is not nice about somebody. But I'm talking about the effect it has on our mind. So being negative and complaining and slandering, all this about other people, independently of the effect that it has on the other people, it is dirtying the mind. So you are not protecting your mind. And here comes another very interesting word. If we are talking about how the mastery of socha brings jugupsa, the desire to protect, well, what is the word for protection in yogic scriptures? The word is mantra. If you want to protect the mind, mantra, tra is protection, man is mind. So mantras is the protection of the mind. So the practice of mantra chanting, reciting mantras, is going to have the effect of socha on the mind. Again, this socha is beyond just the level of the mind. It's all the different levels, body, mind, spirit, all of them. But it will also relate to the mind. And in those terms, then chanting mantras would be very useful. So that's interesting. All right, let's take a look at the next. The next is Santosh. Let's check the translation. Sorry, I forgot to mention there is one sutra for every niyama except the first one, which has two sutras. So the mastery over socha, mastery over socha, is not only this protection, I would call it, not only this protection, but it also has other qualities. Like here is where it talks about sattva, shuddhi, so purification of the sattva, and sattvic food, like I was just mentioning before, happiness and clarity of mind, one-pointedness of the mind, being able to concentrate, mastery of the senses, and overall realization of the self. And okay, let me see if I can move a little bit. Becoming ready for the realization of the self. Yeah? So doing these things prepares you to realize yourself, the mastery of the senses and all this. So this sutra, it's also telling, this is all consequence of socha, of purity. All right, let's go to 142, and that's santoshat, santosh. And the root is together with, completely, perfectly, to be satisfied. Satisfied. It's often translated as contentment. Let me have the translations. From contentment comes, let me focus this again. Contentment, supreme joy is gained, comes superlative happiness. From an attitude of contentment, santosha, unexcelled happiness, mental comfort, joy, and satisfaction is obtained. I feel like I'm speaking a bit fast today. I don't know if it's from I was speaking a little bit more Spanish this weekend, and the Spanish always tends to accelerate the mind. Let me slow down a little bit. So santosh, often translated as contentment or satisfaction. Let's put contentment here today. Contentment. Satisfied. And through contentment, supreme joy, sukha. We talked about dukkha and sukha already in the Yoga Sutras. It's come up a few times. Is attained. So the gift that you receive from the practice of contentment is supreme joy. Which is nice. Sí, un poco rápido. Gracias. Yeah, I was accelerated. So, supreme joy. Now, that's interesting because this joy, this sukh, it's already pointing towards ananda. Yeah, we know that when we explore in the teachings of yoga, when they say, what is the true reality, who we truly are, in the essence, we find these three things, sat, chit, ananda. Chit being consciousness, and sat is the truth, and ananda is the bliss. And look, we were just talking about satya here in the yamas. Yeah, this is all connected, and now we have this joy, the sukh, supreme joy. So that's kind of ananda, getting closer to ananda. And so we have the sat and the ananda, and our consciousness is focused on doing all this. So sat, chit, ananda. And it's very funny, this Santosh. When I was in university, I had a friend. I used to go with a group of friends from the Chinese community. For some reason, they always accepted me very, very rapidly. The Chinese community always felt like I was one of their own. I think I may have spent some past life in China, but anyway, I was with one of these groups. There was one girl, and she was a lovely, lovely little girl. It's like very small. And when we would have a meal, we would all be eating. And Chinese meals are like a lot of dishes in the table, and everybody can, you can take and as much as you want, and you put on your plate, and you are all sharing the food, which is something I really like. And so she would be, doing like the rest, filling her plate and picking from here and here and eating. And there would be one moment when she was perfect. And then she would stop eating and would say, satisfied. And she would say that. And every time it became kind of like a meme. In those times, we didn't know what memes were, but I don't think Richard Dawkins had written the book yet. Maybe he had, I don't know. But it became like a meme because every time, eating, she would then, at some point, stop and, satisfied. And she was satisfied. She was happy. She didn't need any more food. So not overindulgent. You remember when we talked about in the Yamas, we mentioned brahmacharya, like godly conduct and not to overindulge. So for her, just when the right moment came, she was satisfied. She was santosha. Yeah, she was santosha or santosha, sometimes santosha, yeah? The A at the end is kind of, doesn't matter. So she was content. And by mastery of this, we get to supreme joy. So examples of how we break this. And okay, I'm thinking now, I didn't do this correctly because purity was the definition. Then what you get out of it, I didn't write it here. I should have written it here, I didn't. So this is, I should have done in green the other. Let me do it again, so we have it correctly. Hold on, sorry about that. Let me get my brush pen. So there's 5 of those. Socha, santosha, tapas, swadeya, I always have to stop to think how is this spelled. Anishvara pranidhana. And the meaning of socha is purity. And this is contentment. One gift that we received from this contentment was the supreme joy. And from socha, it was this protection. Though we did read a whole page of gifts, yeah, there was focus, being one-pointedness, and mastery of the senses, and there was the preparation towards the self-realization. There was all those things, and then we write in red. We write one of the situations in which we break it, yeah, and what did we say here? Gossip. And here, we could say, for example, the opposite of what my friend was doing. She was saying satisfied and stopping. We can continue eating more even after we get satisfied. And but also, I'm gonna say give another example, a different one. Let me remove this page so it doesn't confuse us. When we compare ourselves to others, this is very typical in the age of social media where we live right now, where we see through a little window into the life of somebody else, whatever they choose to show you of their life, and then you compare and you think that they have a better life than me because, this person wakes up at 5 a.m. or because they do beautiful, healthy smoothie every morning, or because, she's able to, prepare food for the whole family and eat something healthy and do some exercise even before going to work or whatever. Whatever we compare ourselves with, in a way, we could do it as a form of inspiration, but very often we do it as a form of not feeling content with where we are with what we do. And so there is this comparison and perfectionism driving the feeling of lack of contentment. So never content, never happy, never satisfied. There's always something to improve, something to change. And that's kind of funny because it's a paradox. This could also be a gift. Like many of these things in yoga, there's both sides, the light and the dark. They're always feeling that you can get a bit better. That's good. That's going to help you improve. It's going to help you get to the next level. And this is something that I reflect upon very often. What's my next level? Where can I get to? How can I improve this? Whatever I'm doing, what is the next level that I can get to? And constantly try to get to the next level. That's really nice. But one should be able to get to a next level and then enjoy that. And enjoy the peace of not even just getting to the next level, but enjoying the peace and the contentment that may come with doing what you need to do to get to the next level. So it's not about feeling discontent with what you are doing, and so I want to get to the next level, but okay, I identify the next level where it is, and I start putting into motion what I need to do to get to that level, and feeling satisfied with what you are doing to get to that next level. And don't be too hypercritical of what we do or what we don't do, and perfectionist and comparing ourselves to others and so on. It's a tough culture, particularly in yoga. If you look in yoga, there's so many things that the teachings tell us that we could do. And there is all these purification things that you could be doing. There's all these mantras you could be doing. There's all these asanas, and you could practice these kriyas for this and for this benefit. And you can do these meditations for that. And don't forget to do 2.5 hours of sadhana every morning. And I don't know, and vegetarian lifestyle. And when you put a list all together, it's impossible to meet all those things. And so the tendency may be like, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. And that's not the feeling of satisfied. That's not the feeling of contentment. And when you perfect santosha, it brings peace, supreme joy and peace, content, satisfied. Otherwise, you fall into this rabbit hole of always trying to make things perfect for yourself. In my house, we have a little rule, also coming from Japan. I'm very influenced by Asian cultures, as you can see, that there is this concept of wabi-sabi in Japan. And it's kind of appreciating the imperfection of the world, of things. So when in my house, when I'm with my daughters, we're creating something artistic, then we do the best that we can, and then we appreciate the wabi-sabi of it, and then see how, okay, it's not perfect. Sometimes I will even say, oh, this is perfect. And my daughters, no, daddy, it's not perfect. I'm like, okay, it's wabi-sabi. Okay, it's wabi-sabi. So this concept helps to appreciate when we make mistakes. And we started doing this because the little one, she's quite sensitive. And when she would notice that she had made a mistake, she would feel really bad inside and ashamed. And it's great to want to grow and to make things better, but it's not good when we fall into this kind of shame to ourselves. All right. Okay. So let's move on to the next three. Now, the next three are special because we have already seen them. We already talked about tapas, swadhyaya, and Ishvarya pranidhana. And that is in the very beginning of the second chapter of the Yoga Sutras. You may remember how in the second chapter opened up straight away with Kriya Yoga. And it's interesting because Patanjali explores the concept of Kriya Yoga and Ashtanga. Ashtanga is eightfold path, and that's what we are doing now. And remember, the Yamas and the Niyamas are the first two branches of the eight. Well, within the second branch, which is the relationship to yourself, we have the three legs of Kriya Yoga. Tapas, and that's a relationship more towards the body. Swadhyaya, relationship towards the mind and to ourselves. like studying ourselves, and Ishvara Pranidhana, which is relationship towards the spirit through the heart. So body, mind, and spirit. And we explore this quite in detail in the first video on the second chapter. I believe it was on that one. So we don't need to go a lot in detail into that, but let us complete the table and just remind ourselves, read the translation and remind ourselves of what they were. So 2.43 is going to tell us about tapas. And this is another interesting translation. Through mortification of the organs and the body, through the destruction of their impurities, brings powers to them. By austerity, impurities of the body and senses are destroyed and occult powers gained. Through ascesis, or training of the senses, there comes a destruction of mental impurities. Well, you will recognize this idea of impurities, the impurities of the body which are destroyed, and it comes back to the idea of purity, isn't it? And I have a feeling that it's kind of the same that was happening in Niyamas when the root is ahimsa. And out of ahimsa come all of this. These other four relate to ahimsa in some particular way. They are all there so as not to harm. One example was, okay, yeah, tell the truth. Great, Satya, tell the truth. As long as it doesn't harm others. Right? So it's conditioned to this. And if you do tell the truth, then there will be an aspect of it that is going to help not to create harm, through the truth. And when you steal people, you steal something from somebody, you are harming them. So again, it's kind of connected. Well, if we look at this contentment, for example, when we don't overindulge, like my Chinese friend who was satisfied and she would just stop eating, she would know if you eat too much, then you are not respecting purity in a certain way, because you're going beyond what you need, and that's going to be cluttered. It's like when you see this, going back to this Japanese image of minimalism, these Zen rooms which are quite white and empty, and they have just the right element in the right spot, and that's it. And then when you find harmony between those elements, you feel satisfied. If you put too many things, as soon as it gets cluttered, you lose part of the purity of that. So you could apply that also to the body, and you could also apply it to the mind. It's like when you ask somebody to define something for you, and somebody who is working on a field, and say, what do you work on? On something. Okay, so tell me something about that. And then they give this elaborate explanation that it's only understood by experts in the field. And there's so many words and advanced words, and like, that's unnecessary. And I don't understand it. And if you cannot explain it in a simple, concise way, clear, pure, then you haven't reached mastery of that thing. So when we go into tapas, in the same way, tapas is also connected to the purity. And this tapas, remember, tapas, it was about fire. It was something fire. And it was something that you have to put into your practice. And it's very much connected to the body. So let's call it fiery practice, for example. Because I don't really want to call it mortification or austerity. Because again, austerity would be a translation that would make sense for the ascetic path of the yogis. But for those who are householders, it doesn't make so much sense, austere practices. But it's about fire, putting fire into your practice, zeal, commitment, and devotion and passion in what you do. If you're going to chant mantras, chant them fire, with fire behind them, right? Put fire into the mantras. And that's more like the tapas. You create this internal heat. And that's the heat that is going to burn the seeds of karma. That was the conclusion of the tapas, if you remember. Yeah, burning the seeds of karma. There was one of the samadhis where you burn those impressions. Well, through these tapas, And you can call it ascetic practices, or look, intensity of the spiritual practice, a fiery aspiration. I like this one, fiery aspiration. Then it's an elimination of the impurities and siddhi, kaya, indraya. So you reach mastery. Siddhi can be powers, but it can also be like mastery of the body and the senses. Through this fiery aspiration and fiery practice, you reach a certain mastery of the body and the senses. And this is also giving us clues, because as soon as we finish the yamas and the niyamas, the next step of the eightfold path is going to be asana, pranayama, pratyahara, yeah? And asana and pranayama, particularly asana, is going to be linked to the body, and pratyahara is going to be linked to the senses. So the tapas, the fire that we put into the practice, is going to lead towards the mastery of the body and the senses, which is going to be useful in the following steps. And this helps to illuminate impurities as well. Fire of the practice. Now, let me give an example of something that is the opposite of tapas. I think if tapas is about this fire, doing things with a certain fire and put your will into it, then the opposite should be one of the faults. Like when you do the things because you have to do them. You said, okay, I'm going to do the meditation every day. So you go and you do it like a parrot. You recite the mantras like a parrot. Parrot mantra, let's say. Parrot chanting. You are chanting your prayers, you're chanting your mantras, but your mind is somewhere else. You do it because you have to do it, because you committed and you want to keep the commitment. And there is a certain value in doing that. But where is the intensity? Where is the fire? Where is your conviction? Where is the discipline? The discipline, it is there. You're doing it. But the attention to what you're doing is not there. There's no passion there. There's no fire there. So it's going to be very, very low result as an outcome of that. Another example could be where we want everything to be very, very soft. Like, I have a good example of this. We in the last years, I noticed a change in the last 10 years when I was teaching trainings teaching yoga, teachers of yoga, how everybody wanted to protect the students much more. And I would notice how you have to lead a class, but be careful with this posture. If it's too much, stop it. If you feel tired, do pause. And if there is any form of pain, just calm down and relax and take a break. And there's so much overprotection. This is like the helicopter mama yogi, and creating these little baby yogis and yoginis in bubbles of pure relaxation. If you are sitting, it has to be with the right thafu and the right blanket, and everything has to be super comfortable so that the meditation is glorious. Well, you know what? You should be able to meditate even if you're uncomfortable, even if your leg is falling asleep, even if there is too much noise, even if there is any discomfort. The sun is hitting now, and now I'm sweating and I'm comfortable, but are you going to move and try to find the comfort, or are you just going to sweat through it? And the fire of tapas is about this, being able to apply yourself no matter what. And sometimes in the culture we live in right now, looking for commodity, looking for comfortable, everybody should be comfortable. That's not what the fire is about. So, yeah, I would. It's not that I would avoid comfort. I certainly teach how to utilize cushions to obtain the best posture for your back, so that you can meditate and your body can relax better. But if you try to find the perfect posture that is the perfect comfort, you're never going to find it. And we come back to this idea of perfectionism, and you're never going to be content, and you're always going to be moving in the practice, and then you're holding a posture, but then it's uncomfortable, so you change the posture or you do a break. Sometimes you just have to sweat through it. Some kriyas are strong, and you are 3 minutes holding the arms, and you're doing a particular breath, maybe breath of fire, which goes with the tapas as well, and it's a difficult posture, and your mind is going to feel tempted to lower the arms, and you have to bring your tapas to hold it. So by not listening to the distraction of lower the arms, what your mind is telling you, you're actually becoming a master of your body and the senses. Yeah? And you are capable of going beyond what the body and the senses are telling you. So that's how tapas also connects with that. And you can see that also kind of like an austerity, but not in the sense that I would spend 40 days without eating or 40 days sleeping on the ground, direct stone on the floor. Why are you doing that? That sounds like a punishment, like you feel guilty for something and you feel that you need to punish yourself. I don't subscribe to that idea. But this concept that I'm going to do this kriya and I know it's going to be difficult and there may be some pain, but you know what? Even when I was born, there was pain. Yeah, there is the pain of something new being born out of you. Okay, I'm going to go through that. That's a kind of austerity. That's a kind of fire that applied in the right proportion can help you transform. Yeah, fire transforms. If you have a clay pot, before putting it into the fire, it breaks very easily. But after you put it into the fire, it becomes a mug. Now you can use it to drink water for a whole generation. To your children, you can give it if it doesn't break. But before putting fire, as soon as you use it a few times, it would leak water and it would stop working. So fire transforms and completes. And this is how the fire of our practice is leading us. Yeah, this mastery of the body, of the senses, is leading us to the next level. Remember, this is more about the body. This is more about the mind, and this is more about the heart and the spirit. So you see, the body and the senses are going to be linking to the mind. Let's go to the mind, the Swadhyaya. If I'm going too fast, let me know now. If not meaning speaking, but if I am like running through the Niyamas, let me know. Or let me know how you understand it. The concept of austerity. Swadhyaya, okay, let's read the translation first. By study of spiritual books comes communion with one's chosen deity. By the repetition of the mantra comes the realization of the chosen deity. From self-study and reflection on sacred words, one attains contact communion with that underlying natural reality or force. Okay? So, Swadhyaya, sacred study and japa, mantra recitation, integration and application of mantra, study of scripture, self-observation. That means also to observe yourself, to look at yourself, to study yourself. What am I doing? What do the teachings say? What am I doing? Yeah, you study the scriptures and you study yourself. And by doing that, you realize what you have to adjust. Let's call it self-study. Let's call it study of scriptures, a study of the self-study. And it's curious, the swa aspect of Swadhyaya, it's also there. It's interesting. Swa is yourself, your own, and there is some air in there. What I understand is that this study is not an intellectual thing. So when we talk about Swadhyaya, this is not studying the scriptures as an intellectual concept where we read the Yoga Sutras or the Bhagavad Gita or whatever, the Vedas, and we intellectualize it and we understand it. Oh yes, Tattvamest, I am that, I am God, I am Brahman. Oh yes, God is within me, yes. That's just something you are saying in your mind. That's not it. You got to realize that. You got to come to experience that. So it's not an intellectual thought. It's not an intellectual concept. It's about okay, you read something in the scriptures, okay, now explore within you. See how it goes within you. How do you integrate that? It's also the integration here. There was this integration and the application of mantra. So Don't just chant the mantra, integrate it within you. Can the mantra vibrate within you so that it becomes part of you? All that. And the translation, and he said, well, okay, through doing that self-study, then samprayogaha, that's the union with Ishtadevata, with your Isht and Devata, so your desired. For a moment, I got confused. I will say what I was thinking in a moment. So Isht is like the object of your conviction. No? Sometimes in Kundalini Yoga we say your Isht is the focus of your devotion. Yeah, that's your desired deity. That's how generally it's translated. No? So whatever God, whatever form or formless shape God takes, that's what you merge with. So by the study of the scriptures and the study of yourself, then you come to merge with the, what's the word? Communion with your desired deity. Deity, and when I say deity, I mean whatever concept of the divine you have, your desired form for that divine, then you find union with that. And you breathe it, swa, swa, you breathe it, yeah? You feel it in your breath. So one of the mistakes, I would say, one of the ways in which we don't realize we are breaking Swadeya is when we just intellectual in, that's Pete, what are you writing to? Is that those two ones? Or I'm not sure what you mean. One of the examples I would give that we break this Swadeya could be when we, for example, read books about meditation. Yeah. We read about meditation rather than meditate. Right? We can read so many books. There is so many books out there that talk about meditating and the benefits of meditation and how good it is for you. And you can be an addict of reading about books on meditation, or you can just close the books and meditate. So that would be one way in which we are not doing Swadeya when it becomes something intellectual in our mind. Mistake, union with higher consciousness or the higher self. Union with higher consciousness or the higher self, okay? You mean for this Swadeya, yeah, communion. Well, the self, if you go for the self, for the real self within you, is connected to the, your higher self is connected to the divine. So yes, by self-study or study of yourself, then you are studying the divine as well. Yeah, communion. Yeah, communion. Yeah. Communion with the deity, communion with yourself, with your real self, with your higher self, and therefore with the divine within you and the divine without you, yeah, outside, inside and outside. Very good. And so we go to the last one, Isvara Pranidhana. Now we talked quite a bit about this one because, absolutely, yeah, good. So Isvara Pranidhana appeared in chapter 1, and we quite extensively talked about it. And Ishvara meaning one of the names that we give to the divine again, and Pranidhana meaning this surrender and devotion. But let's read the translation first for the next one. That's the last one that we will do today. From surrender to the Lord, the state of Samadhi is perfected. Through the sacrificing of all to Ishvara comes Samadhi. By total surrender to God, Samadhi is attained. Yeah. Samadhi. So surrender, and I would say devotion. Yeah, surrender and devotion. So Isvara Pranidhana, surrender and devotion. Here it is. And alignment with God, with the divine. And Ishvara is this form of the divine that we give. By doing this, Samadhi is Siddhi. So mastery of Samadhi. We reach mastery of Samadhi. It's not so much about having powers, having spiritual powers, but it's about mastering Samadhi. So surrender or devotion. Let's put both. To Ishvara, to the divine. What was that? Mastery of Samadhi. So interesting, as we were coming here, we have been working from Sat through our consciousness to Ananda, getting closer to Ananda, which means Satchidananda is the essence of our self, of our true self, and through this fire, through the body and the senses, and studying this true self that we are just talking about, we explore this Satchidananda experience and we surrender to the divine. It's kind of like a journey, it's like a story. It's kind of telling us a story, Don't harm others, don't harm yourself, tell always the truth, go beyond the false ego, and then you're slowly, through your conduct, don't be attached, and then pure of actions, and then you're slowly coming into this samadhi. It's leading towards samadhi. Even the practices when this is about the body, and this is about the mind, and this is about the body and the senses, so it's like asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, leading towards the samadhi. So at the very end, he's telling us, look, even the very last step, the samadhi, without the surrender and the devotion, you're not going to get there. So this is also going to give us a very important clue, because some yogis will take it as, well, I will just do all the steps, and by the power of my own practice, I will get there. Well, good luck with that. You gotta surrender. You gotta let go and let God. Yeah, you have to let go of everything that you are trying, even you're trying to control even your own enlightenment, right? Control. This is, let me put it like this. Control. Some people are control freaks. They try to control everything around them and everything in them. Then the measure of how much we try to control the world and around us and things within us is how much we are unable to surrender and feel devotion. And it's not about, some people feel, well, if I let go of the control, if I stop planning everything in my life step by step, it's like the wrong kind of surrender. It's like giving up. It's like depression. It's like passivity. It's tamasic. But there is a sattvic form of devotion and surrender. It's about doing everything I have to do with fire, with intensity, and with my tapas, but then also let go of the hope for any result of what comes. Only with that purity of the devotion and the surrender, then can the last step come, can the samadhi fully come. So it's giving us clues of the right attitude we need to have, so that when we are doing the other 6 steps, you will remember, hold on, I'll show you here. The right attitude, so that when we are doing all these 6 steps, is going to bring us towards this samadhi. Samadhi is self-realization. The self, you cannot know it without Isvara Pranidhana. Swadhyaya. You have to study about yourself. So that comes from here, and it takes some fire to get here. So every one of the steps from the yamas and the niyamas are preparing us on this path. So they are kind of parallel. I don't see them so much as step 1, step 2, step 3, 4, 5, and so on. But these yamas and niyamas are going to be always in parallel in an attitude towards this, in the path towards this samadhi. There we go. These are the 5. Socha, Santosh, Tapas, Swadhyaya, Isvara Pranidhana. And this is the path of the 10 yamas and niyamas that we have been exploring. And with this, we conclude the yamas and niyamas, and the next week we will start the sutras where they talk about these other 6 steps. It's going to be the asana, pranayama, pratyahara, going towards samadhi. But we are going to be quite quick from now on. We had to go quite in detail into these things. But for example, the next step is asanas. What I'm not going to do here is going to a whole, spend 1 hour talking about asanas, because yes, we will explore the concept of asanas, but we're going to move quite quick now. And my feeling is that we are reaching the end of the course we have, even though we are only on chapter 2. Chapter 3 is a lot about the cities, and chapter 4 is about the ultimate samadhi. And we talked a lot about samadhi in the first chapter. So the following videos, I think, is going to be quite quick. So we will see that very soon it will be close to over. I think it's quite likely that we will finish before the ending of the year. So that will be nice. And starting a new year, we can start a new course, maybe come back to numbers that we've left them for a while. But for now, for today, it's enough. Thank you very much, everyone here. Thank you, everyone who was watching, and for liking and subscribing and sharing the videos and so on. Thank you, Pete, to be here and writing and helping to move the conversation along. And thank you for all the members of the channel as well for your support. And until next time, thank you, Satnam.